some form. So they're not exactly talking about a check going out explicitly in that form. But what they're talking about is some compensation, some way in which you make up. I'm an opponent of reparations. Why? Because in fact, I used to have these arguments with Charles Krauthammer. It was people who were saying, yeah, okay, let reparations happen, and that's the end of every effort, such as affirmative action, such as programs to help make up for problems in our public schools in this country. It was going to be like a one-time deal, and then you're on your own. And I think that we have a broader obligation to deal with the implications of slavery and legal segregation, what Harris was talking about a moment ago.
So you're saying that it would let people off the hook?
I think it would definitely be, and it would be a one-time deal.
It would be like, it's all been paid off, it's done, and then you think people would what? What would they resort to? I
don't know what people would resort to, but I'm saying in terms of our obligation as Americans and as an American government, that would be done. It's as if you ran into somebody who won the lottery,
but is it good? I guess
and the person then 2 years later is broke.
But is it good to, is this a good way to make society better, to pay people more money, to give an entitlement to right or wrong? What does that solve, and how does that work to make things better?
You loaded that question in such an intriguing way. I don't even know if you're aware of it. When you said entitled, there would be so many arguments about, for example, is Martha MacCallum black? Oh, but she has a black ancestor, but she doesn't appear to be black. So is she qualified? Does someone who came here from the Caribbean as an immigrant 2 generations ago, but doesn't have slave ancestors?
You're talking about who would be entitled to
That's what I'm saying. So
what
it's like entitled.
Is that what Kamala Harris has talked about is let's give everybody who makes under $100,000 a tax credit for reparations. That's something.
No,
so I'm saying that it would essentially, when people say some form of reparations, what I'm hearing is that there would be some form of money, probably a tax credit, something like that, to say we did that.
No, I think it's reparations for slavery. And for people who have ancestors who were slaves.
What form does it take? And she's saying it would be to better education, it would be a tax credit.
So she's doing a form of it, but the actual argument, the reparations argument, and remember, these things have been introduced in the Congress going back to the 80s, John Conyers and others, never gone anywhere. The American public overwhelmingly opposes this concept. So it's not something that's realistic and pragmatic.
Because Thomas Sowell, the economist, talked about the fact that he feels that slavery, which obviously was a grave wrong, was not as bad for the African American community as what happened in the 1960s with the development of the welfare system. So he's saying that essentially, the first 100 years after slavery were a more positive time for African Americans in the United States than post-1960 and the Great Society. He feels like the damage done was greater by the ways that were efforted to fix the problems, the economic problems of the African American community.
Well, I think that's an overstatement, because I don't think you can go back on slavery and the degradation of your humanity. The idea that you're 3/5 human in the Constitution is pretty insulting, and obviously has done tremendous damage, not only to black people, but to the whole concept of America, and we're all created equal and have an equal opportunity to succeed. But I think that what Tom Sowell is saying, it reminds me of what Daniel Patrick Moynihan said, that in so many ways, when we start to look at the black family, especially in that post-civil rights era, late 60s, you start to see a breakdown, because so many of these policies, in fact, had negative repercussions in terms of separating, and we've seen, obviously, a tremendous breakdown in terms of family formation in black America. I think now 70% of black children born out of wedlock. To me, this is a horrific, just a horrendous social consequence. But I don't think that you would want to say that's as bad as slavery.
Juan, thank you. Yeah. Always good to have you here.
Thank you very much,
see you next time. Ben Shapiro, editor-in-chief of the Daily Wire, joins me now. Ben, good to see you. Thanks for being here tonight. It almost feels in some of these interviews that are being done with the 2020 candidates that this question is kind of a litmus test, and the answer has a lot weighing on it.
I think there's no question that's true. This is why Bernie Sanders is being called to account by a lot of members of the intersectional Democratic Party who are deeply concerned and upset with the idea that he would not endorse slavery reparations. Now, what's hilarious is that what Bernie has said is he said all sorts of bad things have happened to black folks in America, and the best way to get beyond that is with my socialist redistributionist schemes. And Kamala Harris basically agrees with that, but because she calls it slavery reparations and Bernie doesn't, this means that Bernie is insufficiently he's insufficiently committed to the idea of race reparations in the country at large. It just goes to show you that race is the central issue for a huge swath of the Democratic Party, and the big dividing line is going to be which is more important, intersectionality or socialist redistributionist policies?
Yeah, I mean, it's clear that these questions are going to be very central to the debate in the 2020 election. But one of the biggest questions, when they're asked this question is how, right? How exactly are you going to repay the debt of slavery, and who is going to repay the debt of slavery exactly?
This is exactly right. And Bernie Sanders said this last night on CNN. I mean, I'm sounding like a Bernie supporter here, but the fact is that Sanders is clearer on this than Kamala Harris or Elizabeth Warren. And when Kamala Harris is asked how, she immediately begins citing all sorts of kind of normal Democratic government programs that she'd like to see pushed anyway, which is not slavery reparations. That's just what we call the Democratic political agenda. The reality is that slavery reparations per se are completely unworkable. Even big advocates of it, like Ta-Nehisi Coates, have failed to come up with any actual metric for how exactly we'd go about doing that. What do you do with, for example, Barack Obama, whose father was black and not from the United States and therefore not having history with slavery, and a mother who is white? Would his family receive slavery reparations? How about Kamala Harris, whose father is Jamaican and mother is Indian? Does she receive slavery reparations? From whom? Does she receive slavery reparations from me? My great-grandparents got here in 1907, long after slavery was over, and lived their entire lives in the North, where Jim Crow was not in effect. It's almost impossible. I think not almost. It is impossible to come up with a fair metric for recompensing slavery 10 generations after slavery's end. If you want to say that recompense should be had for people who benefited from Jim Crow, again, for people who were harmed by Jim Crow, I think that's an easier case. But again, it's going to be hard to determine who pays, who should get how much, and who receives. Yeah.
And it amounts in the explanation that Kamala Harris gave. She talked about the LIFT Act, which basically would be a tax credit for any families who make under $100,000. And she said that it would, obviously include many families, but that it would include a lot of black families, in her opinion. So it is, as you say, another entitlement, essentially. And when you look at, the amount of money in America that is going to entitlements, you go back to 2008, $430 billion. In 2020, the projected is almost double, $807 billion. So it begs the question, if you continue to throw more money at the problem, what exactly does it solve necessarily?
Well, this is exactly right. I mean, the war on poverty, which was launched in part to rectify a lot of the racial imbalances and evils that had been happening in the country, been manifest in America. We've spent tens of trillions of dollars in the war on poverty, and there's been no actual real receipt from that as far as the number of black people who have been raised from poverty by the war on poverty. Again, if you go back to the war on poverty, at that time, 20% of all black children were born into single mother families. Now it's upward of 70%. The black poverty rate is essentially the same now as it was back in 1970. That does not suggest that throwing money at the problem is a cure for whatever historic ailments have been exhibited on the black community. And not just that. The reality is that we now live in a time where legalized discrimination is not only illegal, but it is, for good reason, looked down upon, sneered at by virtually all Americans. And that means that the vast majority of decisions are in the hands of individuals. If we actually want people to rise in society of any race, what we need to be doing now is focusing on making sure the incentives are aligned so that people make the right decisions to bring themselves up out of poverty. Throwing money at the problem is not slavery reparations. In many cases, it is a way of ensuring that people have an incentive not to make the right decisions.
You mentioned Bernie Sanders and his feelings about the reparations issue, but his way of sort of making up for that is doubling down on how bad the president is. Here he is in the CNN town hall. Watch this.
This president is the first president in the modern history of our country who is trying to divide our people up based on the color of their skin, the country they were born in, their sexual orientation, their gender, their religion. And that is an outrage.
Do you think that's true? Is there evidence to back up those statements?
I mean, it's surely nonsensical on a purely objective level. The fact is that Barack Obama in 2012 had African Americans for Obama and Jews for Obama and gays for Obama. President Obama in 2012 basically decided that he was going to create an agglomeration of various groups associated by race, associated by sexual orientation, women for Obama by sex, and then he was going to stick all those groups together and hope that it was a majority. So the notion that dividing people along racial lines is anything new in American politics is simply not true. The notion that Trump is specifically doing that or openly doing that right now. I'm not seeing the evidence of it.
You know, I guess the big question is what works in the next election, because there's a lot of investment in this identity politics kind of avenue for these 2020 candidates. And where is the United States of America right now, do you think? Will this be something that is appealing to people?
I don't think it's appealing to people. I think that's why Bernie Sanders has outsized popularity inside the Democratic Party. Kamala Harris came out the other day and she said that people should stop ripping on identity politics because it's a way of shutting down the debate. Identity politics itself is the way that people shut down the debate. They say that we can't have a reasoned conversation because I'm not a member of your group and you're not a member of my group. Well, then we can't have any discussion at all. Folks like Kamala Harris are very reliant on identity politics. Bernie actually is not, and it's why he has some advantages inside the Democratic Party primaries.
He lost 3 of his top campaign lieutenants today, so we'll see where the campaign's going. Ben Shapiro, always a pleasure. Thank you, Ben.
Thanks a lot.
So the second summit between Trump and Kim is now just hours away, but some critics on the Hill already say it won't work. Mark Thiessen and Mark Hanna. Debate coming up next.
This is not a bed. It's a revolution in sleep. The Sleep Number 360 smart bed from $9.99 intelligently senses your movement and automatically adjusts, so you wake up rested and ready for anything. Save $500 on select Sleep Number 360 smart beds, only for a limited time.
Feel the clarity of non-drowsy Claritin and relief from symptoms caused by over 200 indoor and outdoor allergens, like those from Buddy. Because stuffed animals are clearly no substitute for real ones. Feel the clarity and live Claritin Clear.
Let's be honest. Dealing with your insurance shouldn't be more frustrating than the accident itself. That's why Esurance makes it simple. Just take some pics, go to sleep, wake up, grab a bite, maybe some racquetball, and boom, your money's on the way.
So you can get back on the road fast.
Well, not that fast. The editor had to make it fit in 30 seconds.
It was pretty tricky, actually.
And tagline. When insurance is simple, it's surprisingly painless.
Arby's 2 for $5 crispy and Cajun fish sandwiches feature fillets of Alaskan pollock that are a little too big for the bun. This was not a mistake. You're welcome.
Arby's, we have the meats.
For sandwiches.
Smart news.
I was only watching news I agreed with.
I was only getting news from social media.
Now, I use Smart News.
It has news from all sides.
I trust Smart News.
Download Smart News for free today.
Introducing Nutrisystem's spring sale. Save 50%. Yes, 50%.
It's your favorite foods made healthier, perfectly balanced to put your body in fat-burning mode. Lose up to 13 pounds and 7 inches overall in your first month.
I'm Marie and I lost 50 pounds with Nutrisystem.
I lost 60 pounds with Nutrisystem.
I lost 41 pounds on Nutrisystem.
Count, measure, meetings, not with Nutrisystem.
Order your 28-day plan right now. You'll get specially designed meals.
The food comes right to your door and it tastes great. You get the right foods in the right portions, so you learn how to keep the weight off.
Plus 1 week of all new Fresh Start shakes with probiotics to shrink your belly free.
And there's even a money-back guarantee.
For a limited time, save 50% off every program.
It's the biggest sale of the season. Call or go online right now.
Go online or call 888-671-FIT1 right now to save 50% plus get probiotic shakes free.
Nothing says spring like fresh flowers, so let's promote our spring travel deal on choicehotels.com like this. Earn 1 free night when you stay just twice this spring.
Allergies.
Or bada book, bada boom.
Book now at choicehotels.com.
That one's nice. Car shopping?
That obvious?
Try Car Gurus. Every car is rated from great deal to overpriced. The best deals are sorted first.
Ooh, look at that model. Jinx.
Car Gurus. Find your great deal today.
A special Hannity from Vietnam. Before President Trump meets with North Korea's leader, Sean has must-see insight from an all-star lineup on a special Hannity tonight.
So you like to cook. And you're curious about meal kits. But don't know where to start. All you have to do is... Oh, you're already done. For as low as $50 a week, get fresh ingredients and easy-to-follow recipes delivered weekly. Visit homechef.com for $30 off your first order.
I can't read a thing off of here.
All right, have we decided?
We actually forgot our readers.
Here you go.
As your eyes get older, the adjustments you make can be frustrating. Ask your eye doctor about Dailies Total One multifocal contact lenses. They let you see clearly near and far with a contact lens that feels like nothing. Learn more and get a free 5-day trial at seenearandfar.com.
President Trump and North Korean dictator Kim Jong-un now getting ready. They're going to walk into the room in just a couple of hours, begin that second summit, which is aimed at the goal of complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula for the president. His critics have already pounced. They're deflating the chances of success before they even say hello in that room.
It's been developing a nuclear weapons capability and a ballistic missile capability for many years because it wants to have a deterrent against what it perceives to be an eventual U.S. effort to try to unify the peninsula under South Korea. So he does see this as an existential threat. So I do not believe that he has any intention at this point of giving up that nuclear arsenal.
Here now, Mark Thiessen, American Enterprise Institute scholar and Fox News contributor, and Mark Hanna, fellow at the Eurasia Group Foundation and veteran of the Obama and Kerry presidential campaigns. Good to see you both tonight. Mark Hanna, first to you. I don't know what John Brennan said there that, we don't already know. I mean, obviously, that's sort of that's what he has walking in, but at least there's an effort to try to open that door towards denuclearization in the future.
Yeah, I think we should all be wishing the president well as he tries to achieve that objective. But realistically, this has been a talking point in the foreign policy establishment for several decades, this kind of no denuclearization, no peace. We must insist on complete, verifiable, irreversible denuclearization on the Korean Peninsula. That's just not realistic. And that's not to say I wish President Trump ill in achieving it, but even President Trump has said, well, that's probably not going to happen this time around. So there are neoconservatives who will be prodding this president to put an economic stranglehold on Kim or, to threaten military intervention. But we just put out a report at the Eurasia Group Foundation that found the American people are very reluctant to want to use military intervention generally, much more reluctant than the foreign policy elite. And so they don't see this nuclear threat as existential as some in the foreign policy community might want us to. You're
in favor of a more gradual approach that whatever you can get in terms of eliminating some of those weapons is at least a beginning, correct?
Absolutely. We need to clarify what our needs are and what our wants are. We would want North Korea to be denuclear, but it doesn't present a threat to us right now. We can deter North Korea with what we've got.
I think we've wanted that for a really long time. Mark Thiessen.
Yeah, that's the approach that got us in this mess. I mean, look, the reality is that Donald Trump has inherited a mess from his both Republican and Democratic predecessors who over the last 25 years kicked the can down the road, and we've now run out of road. North Korea on his watch is on the verge of developing and deploying a ballistic missile that can deliver a nuclear warhead to the United States. So this is the reality that he's inherited. And, the one thing that he has done, which we give him, so we should all be rooting for him to succeed. And two, we should give him credit for the fact that he's trying something different.
putting Americans'
Well, I think,
lives
you know
at
what, I
risk.
got to go. But, the goal is the same. The goal is the same. Nobody wants war with North Korea. It's a question of how you get there and the different tactics. And we're watching one tactic play out over the next few days. Mark
Peace is the
Mark
main
Hanna.
goal.
Thank
you, Martha.
Absolutely. Thank you very much. All right, guys. So coming up, Michael Cohen is weeks away from federal prison. He will begin a 3-year sentence for, among other things, lying to Congress. So why is he spending the next 2 days as a witness on Capitol Hill? Byron York says he thinks part of this is an ulterior motive. Next.